Hello, Year 2 students. Welcome back to remote learning for TTC through radio lessons. As usual, my name is Teacher Emma, and I'll be taking you through today's lesson. My dear friends, to support conjoined learning, Rwanda Education Board is partnering with World Bank, UNICEF, and other partners to support remote learning for all levels of education, including TTC. In this lesson, we shall be learning about classroom management in accordance with Unit 2 from the Year 2 Foundations of Education syllabus. We will learn about what classroom management is and why it is important, and different techniques teachers can use to manage their classrooms effectively. As usual, my dear friends, ensure that you are in a free, noise-free environment. Have your notebook and a pen. To help us start thinking about this topic, I want you to listen and reflect on a case study. Listen carefully. Mugabo teaches mathematics in primary 5. He always comes to class 5 minutes late. Friday morning, he came late as usual with no rulers and protractors, even though he needed them for his lesson. After starting the lesson, he realized that he needed rulers and protractors. So, he immediately returned to the staff room to bring them. While he was out of the room, the students shouted and moved around. Some even went outside the classroom. When Mugabo came back, he started teaching, but students were not focused. They were still searching for their books and asking each other questions about what they were supposed to do. Mugabo stopped teaching and gave a punishment to those students who were disturbing the class. Immediately after the bell rang for the next lesson, Mugabo moved out of the class after accomplishing almost nothing in that period. I am going to repeat this case study for you, my friends. Mugabo teaches mathematics in primary 5. He always comes to class 5 minutes late. Friday morning, he came late as usual with no rulers and protractors, even though he needed them for his lesson. After starting the lesson, he realized that he needed rulers and protractors. So, he immediately returned to the staff room to bring them. While he was out of the room, the students shouted and moved around. Some even went outside the classroom. When Mugabo came back, he started teaching, but students were not focused. They were still searching for their books and asking each other questions about what they were supposed to do. Mugabo stopped teaching and gave a punishment to those students who were disturbing the class. Immediately after the bell rang for the next lesson, Mugabo moved out of the class after accomplishing almost nothing in that period. Thank you for listening. I wonder if that situation feels familiar to you. Have you ever experienced such a situation before as a student? Now, I would like you to reflect on the case study and answer some questions. I will read the questions and then give you some little time to think and write your answers. And I'm going to read the questions slowly, and please write them down. Number 1, What were the main problems with Mugabe's classroom management? Let me repeat. What were the main problems with Mugabe's classroom management? Number 2, what was negative outcome? What was the negative outcome of Mugabe's poor classroom management? What was the negative outcome of Mugabe's poor classroom management? Number 3, what would you recommend Teacher Mugabe to do next time? What would you recommend Teacher Mugabe to do next time? Okay, my friends? You have a second to answer those questions. Now, my friends, you have 5 seconds to answer these 3 questions. They're just simple. Remember the first one? They were asking about what was the main problem in Mugabe's classroom management. Number 2 was about what was the negative outcome of Mugabe's poor classroom management. And number 3 was, what would you recommend Teacher Mugabe to do next time? Great! Did you come up with some good answers? Well done. Now, let me share some of my reflections about Teacher Mugabe's classroom management style. The main problem with Mugabe's classroom management starts with his own behavior. He comes late and is unprepared. He is disorganized, and therefore students are too. He doesn't give students clear rules or instructions. The results of Mugabe's poor classroom management is that students wasted the entire period. They were unable to focus and learn because he did not set them up for success and organize the learning experience. Some recommendations that Mugabe could follow next time include: prepare adequately and have all the required materials ahead of time. Number 2, he should arrive in class a few minutes in advance in order to maximize the students' learning time. Teacher Mugabe also should assign a simple task to keep students busy whenever he realizes that he needs to be out of the class for a short time. Also, he needs to set clear rules and guidelines to follow during class time and remind students of them constantly. He also needs to make the learning process clear and interesting so that students will pay attention. Did you have some of the same ideas? Wonderful. The case study really showed us how important classroom management is to the learning process. It also gave us an idea of what classroom management includes. But to be sure, we all have the same understanding. I am going to read a definition for you. Please listen carefully and write the definition in your notebook. Classroom management is the actions and strategies teachers use to establish and maintain the classroom as an effective environment for teaching and learning. Let me repeat. Classroom management is the actions and strategies teachers use to establish and maintain the classroom as an effective environment for teaching and learning. Let me say that again. Classroom management is the actions and strategies teachers use to establish and maintain the classroom as an effective environment for teaching and learning. My dear friends, classroom management is a broad term. It involves preparing for many different aspects of learning. Therefore, good classroom management should consider: number one, classroom design and setup. This is the positioning of desks, displays, storage, cupboards, equipments, and other materials. I want you to really write down this keyword, the classroom design. As a teacher, how do you organize your classroom environment? Right away, starting from the desks where students sit, the cupboards where we keep all the materials, textbooks, and other resources, but the entire general classroom setup. Number two, rules and consequences. What do we mean by rules and consequences? I want you to write down that keywords. Rules and consequences. This is the expected behavior and how misbehavior will be handled. That is what it means when we talk of rules and consequences. A good classroom management also should consider time management. This is having a clear daily timetable or schedule that is followed so that time on the task is maximized. Time management, very important. Remember, Teacher Mugabo always, he comes to class 5 minutes late. That's not good. Number 4, a good classroom management should also consider organization of materials. What do we mean? This is having a system where learning materials are kept and how they are used as part of class routines. The keywords there are organization of materials. I hope you are noting those down. And lastly, a good classroom management should also consider engaging instruction. This is using teaching techniques that are interesting and participatory. Engaging techniques or engaging instruction. If you have 4 of these and so many more, are we together, my friends? These 5 are just examples, but it doesn't mean that they are the only ones. When we talk of classroom management, as we said, as I mentioned, it's broad. It encompasses a lot of teacher practices that will determine the nature of your classroom. As a teacher, remember, my friends, teachers are like books. People read us from the shoes to the last hair on your head. And again, your behavior will also be very important in determining a good classroom environment. A good classroom management is one of the most important things that teachers should focus on. Without good classroom management, it is unlikely that quality learning outcomes will be achieved. But good classroom management, it isn't easy. What are some of the specific things you think teachers should do to have a good classroom management? I am going to give you some little time to note down your ideas. Write down what you think or what teachers should do to have a good classroom management. Great! Did you come up with some good strategies? Fantastic! There are very many different suggestions that teachers can follow when implementing good classroom management. Considering all 5 components mentioned, a few of them are: 1. I want you to write down these keywords. Number 1, model desired behavior. Model desired behavior. Can you write that down? The teacher should be a role model and show through words and actions the right way to behave. Do you think Teacher Mugabo was a good role model? Of course not. A bad time manager, but also someone who is not able to plan. Therefore, if we want to become good role models, we must walk the talk. Number 2, set and enforce class guidelines together with students. I think this is very key. This is where most of my fellow teachers or fellow tutors go wrong. What do? You get to find yourself making a list of classroom management rules that you must enforce in your class. Those are yours. In other words, what are we being asked to do? We are supposed to set and enforce class guidelines together with students. The teacher should take time to agree on the way the class should operate with students' participation. When students participate in setting up classroom rules, they own them because they are part and parcel of the team that developed them. Number 3, respond to students as individuals. Let me repeat this. Respond to students as individuals. Yes, this is a challenge to quite a number of my fellow teachers. When we see students seated in class, 30 or 40, we tend to look at them as one. And that's a mistake. These are totally different individuals with different needs and interests. Therefore, the teacher should not punish or praise the whole class, but instead try to make feedback specific. Number 4, use nonverbal communication. Use nonverbal communication. Very important. The teacher should move around the class and observe students' body language, but also use body language such as touch, looks, and to make sure that students are on task. And 2, we also should use gestures. We must train our students to be able to read the nonverbals. Number 5, build excitement for learning. Support children to develop interest in learning. The teacher should be enthusiastic and make the learning process interesting and fun. Come to a lesson full of life. If you come to a lesson full of life, your students will enjoy and learning will be fun. Number 6, allow students to make choices and take initiatives. The teacher should give students different options of things they can do during free study time and encourage them to take responsibility for their learning. Are we together, my friends? There are just a few, but some good strategies to start with. I hope you are following. We've just looked at only 6 strategies, but there are many more that a teacher can be able to use in order for you to implement a good classroom management. Good classroom management is very important, because if the class is not properly managed, this is going to affect the teaching and learning process. So, my friends, now that we know some of the components and strategies for good classroom management, let's do a couple of exercises. I am going to read for you a small scenario, and I want you to identify the classroom management technique it shows in action. Are you ready? Let's begin. Teacher Fatima often uses the smart classroom for her science lessons. She shows videos of the real concepts that she's teaching about. This makes students excited and also helps them understand well. She finds they are all on task during the lesson and everyone is eager to learn. What technique does Teacher Fatima use? Great. Build excitement for learning. That's right. She makes the content interesting, motivating, and this helps her lessons go smoothly. Let's try another one. Scenario 2. Teacher Jen always takes time at the beginning of the year to talk with students about the ways that they should behave. He takes ideas from students and writes them down on a flip chart. They review, they brainstorm, and ultimately come up with a set of 5 class rules. They will also talk about what will happen if these rules are broken. The list of the rules and the consequences is posted in the classroom. What technique does Teacher Jean use? Set and enforce class guidelines together with students. That's right. He takes time to make sure expectations are clear and agreed upon at the beginning. This sets the class up for success. My dear friends, before the lesson begins, agree with your students on how both of you run the class. Let's do more. One more. When Amina is teaching, she frequently calls individual students by name. She says things like, "I like the way Keza is prepared for the lesson," or "That's very clear explanation, Ganza." She does the same even students when they misbehave. She doesn't so. Everyone stop making noise. Instead, she says things like, "Fabrice, remember to use an inside voice." Students learn what to do by getting this specific feedback. What technique does teacher Amina use? Respond to students as individuals. That's right. She makes the feedback specific and personal. She uses both praise and correction so that students are clear about what they are doing right or wrong and motivates them to improve. Did you get all those correct? Perfect. My dear friends, we are coming to the end of our lesson. As we conclude, let me remind you some of the key points that we learned about classroom management. Classroom management is an action or actions and strategies teachers use to establish and maintain the classroom as an effective environment for teaching and learning. Classroom management is a broad term, and we said it involves many different aspects of learning, which includes classroom design and setup, rules and consequences, time management, organization for materials, engaging instruction. As we conclude, think about the benefits from a well-managed classroom and write them in your notebook. Student, teachers, parents, thank you so much for your participation. This lesson has been developed by Rwanda Education Board, World Bank, UNICEF, Help a Child, Right to Play, and IE Rwanda. Always tune in to our radio lessons. Until next time, goodbye.